Hello, sisters. Yeah. I stream, you stream, we all shout for new stream. Thank you, Aqua, for bringing us back to like old time shit. Um, and yeah, Clown World. This one wasn't very concrete or practical. I didn't like the Freudian stuff at all, but I did find like the most of the analysis of the mother-daughter dynamic wasn't Freudian based. She kind of like sprinkled that on top, it seemed to me at least. So I appreciated most of it. Okay, I'm just gonna let Momo outside. Momo, you wanna go outside? It's raining. There, go. Don't look at me like that. You're not good. Hello. Okay, well. If you're not going, I'm closing it. It's kind of cold out. Granny Aqua, the keeper of the old ways, lol. Where's Komutashio? Every time I see the dab, I'm like, yo, where is she? Okay, so this essay, it was very theoretical, but as Clown World has just pointed out, that's in the title, so we can't really fault her for that because she's like, yeah, it's supposed to be theoretical. Okay. Okay. I don't think this is going to be a super long stream because I have work in 4 hours and maybe I could get like an hour nap. Yes, Aqua, it was quite interesting. So, in general, also, I think that what I need to start doing is like rating the essays, like in the video where I read them, like put like a rating in the bottom. Because some people are like commenting on the bisexuality essays and being like, yes, this is like so like interesting and like this has taught me so much. And I'm like, I think the whole essay is stupid. So maybe I should at least put like a rating in the bottom and be like, I rate this essay like 1 out of 5 or something, you know? I don't know. Okay. So this one, when I compare it to the really, really good essays, the one about aging, um the Princess Charming is not a prince, the women's socialization, or the barrier no, that was yeah, the conflicts over power dependency. When I compare it to the really, really good essays in here, it's not quite the same level as amazing. It definitely does not belong in the same category as the postmodern bullshit essays. Even though it was quite theoretical and like philosophizing, I think was the word Clown World used. Um, I still think it's like to me it felt like a useful thought exercise. And I definitely didn't feel like this chapter at all was like male identified. So that was nice. All right. Oh yeah, and also somebody, I think it was Clown World, was like, "Why do you keep mentioning differently abled people or whatever?" Where is the thing? Oh hey, Lita. Aqua says, Benji, did you get to process that about your relationship with your mom? I think you might need some time to have it sink in. Yeah, honestly, oh, it wasn't you, Clown World. Well, whatever. Somebody used that. And I feel it's pretty accurate for this chapter, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, right? Like I like honestly so far in this book I like the variety of perspectives and opinions and stuff even when I don't agree with them. I like that it's like it's not like all saying the same thing. I did find this essay quite repetitive. Um yeah. Okay, wait. Let me read the thing about who this lady is before we talk about like the chapter and like my coming out to my mom. Because obviously we're talking about that. Also, though, guys, if you are a bi or a lesbian, if you would like to share some of your thoughts or feelings about your coming out with to your mom, if it's related at all to the essay or anything like that, like just throw some stuff out there. Um, what the fuck? I don't know why my Wi-Fi is being shit recently. Because it's like the Wi-Fi, it's like the internet itself is bad, even if you're plugged in with an Ethernet. Okay, well, I don't know. This is a waste of time. Okay, I'll try it the other way. Um,
Hey man, how's it going?
no, shut up. Okay, so who is Sherry Ditter? Zitter. Sherry Zitter. Sherry Zitter. M.S.W. L.I.C.S.W. I looked. Remember last time I looked up all the titles and whatever, and they were all like the same thing. I'm not going to look them up this time. Is a social worker. Great, so we know. Okay. He's a social worker from Massachusetts who works primarily with deaf and other differently abled populations. She herself is hearing and a lesbian. She received her master's degree from Smith College for Social Work in Northampton, Massachusetts in 1983. She is active in social workers for peace and nuclear disarmament, as well as deaf rights organizations, and is currently setting up an inpatient program for deaf psychiatric patients in Massachusetts. Yeah. So it makes sense why she's bringing it up because it's like that's her professional experiences with that population. So when she's talking about like therapies and treatments and what goes down in therapy, it makes sense that she is like comparing her experience. Um, Possible person says I never really came out. People have always read me as a lesbian. There was no surprise or big moment. If anything, there was a pleasant surprise that I'm down with men. Yeah, Aqua. Aqua's saying that it never occurred to her that it was so complex, like with lesbians with mothers and daughters. And then she also says, sometimes maybe I'm not so into diving into the murky waters of mother daughter relationships. It seems like a lot of work. That's definitely where I'm at. Like, honestly, I felt kind of anxious before I started reading the essay because, specifically, like in the last 2 days, my relationship with my mother has deteriorated even more. So I was like, oh no, I'm going to be like very emotional while I'm reading this. But actually, I wasn't. I kept trying. Honestly, it's so sad. Subconsciously kept trying to like reflect on my experience based on what the essay was saying, and I couldn't because the whole essay is based on the premise of like your mom loves you and wants to like have a positive relationship with you, and like these are the barriers to that. Or like your mom loves you and wants to protect you and that's why she's acting like in this way that's actually harmful or whatever. And like I don't know what my mom feels towards me, right? But her behavior is not at all what was described in this. Like to you would need to have like strong attachment to your daughter to have a strong reaction to it. And like she basically had no reaction to it. Possible person says my mom doesn't do personal mushy conversations anyway. No, yeah, me too. I talked about it to her as a teenager and when I moved away to university, like being very explicit and being like, when I have like emotional needs or when I'm like upset or something, I can never talk to you because you don't know, like you literally can't talk about those things. And I'm like, that's weird. And like that's an unusual thing for like a parent child relationship. Um, but it's like it's probably her own like I don't know about your mom, but at least my mom, I think it's like her own fucking trauma and stuff. I'm like, what am I supposed to do about that? Like she needs to deal with it. So but okay, well, since we're on the topic, I'll tell you of my mom is very mushy. It's in a nice way. Oh, that's nice. Um my actual coming out, this is what happened. So when I actually like re-identified with womanhood, that was like the exact time that I was like, oh, I'm a lesbian. And that was like in the spring. It was like March or something. But I didn't like come out as re-identified or like a lesbian until the end of the school year. Because I was like, it's only like one more month um till the end of exams and stuff, and it'll be easier to just like start the school year fresh with like a new pronouns and identity and whatever. So that summer, I don't know which month it was, but that summer I did go home to Toronto for like a week or two. And I remember very specifically waiting until there was a time that me and my mom and dad would be at a restaurant, all three of us by ourselves. Um, so we were at this restaurant, the three of us, and I was like, okay, this is a good time. Like, we're in public, so my mom can't have a meltdown. And it was specifically about her because I knew my dad, like, he would have some kind of reaction, but I didn't think he would like flip out or anything because he's honestly like pretty chill. Even if he like vehemently disagrees with something, he'll like be very chill about it, you know? But my mom, I was like, I thought she was gonna like lose her crap. So I was like, we need to do this in a public space. And also I thought she was in a pretty good mood that day. And it was like, it was so fucking short and brief. Like the entire exchange was like 2 sentences. I don't even remember how I started it, but it was something along the lines of like, "Oh, I just think you guys should know, like, I'm for sure a lesbian," or like something like that. I don't even remember what I said. Something like very lame like that. It was very like non-dramatic. And my mom just said like this is an appropriate topic for discussing in public, and that was the end of it. That was my coming out. Then it was never discussed again. And like me and my girlfriend actually lived with dad for a while, and he helped us move and like he knew her and her family, like he invited her family to our house for Christmas and stuff. Like, so even though me and my dad never talked about like the coming out, right? He's obviously very like at some point very, 'cause when I was like a teenager, I remember him literally telling me and my sister like point blank, like, if you guys ever marry women, I will not walk you down the aisle because I don't think that's marriage because I'm a Christian. Like I remember him point blank telling him this kind of stuff when we were teenagers. And honestly, I kind of appreciated that as a teenager because I was like, at least with him, I know where I stand. And with my mom, I didn't. So even though I felt like rejected and whatever by my dad, I was like, at least I know where I stand, right? With my mom, it was always like, it felt to me, I don't know what her thought process was, but it felt to me like she didn't care enough to have any opinions or thoughts on that kind of thing. Um, Maybe from her perspective, she was trying to give me space to figure stuff out. Because you have to remember, I started dressing like in boy mode or whatever when I was like 13. So I looked like a little fucking dyke for like my whole teenage years. Anyway, so my dad is like chill with it and like supportive and stuff. And he told me that when he saw me in my relationship with my ex, he was like, "You looked so happy and you guys like made each other happy." And he was like, "When I saw that, then I understood like that, then it all made sense to me," kind of thing is what he told me. Um, Myron said I wouldn't want my dad to walk me down the aisle anyways, lol. No, yeah, same. But I mean, as a teenager, to be told that. Aqua says people forget they can grow over time. That's something else I appreciate about this essay. Um, that she acknowledges several times, like there's going to be an evolution, there's going to be like growing pains, there's going to be good and bads, and like things are going to change, and that's okay. Like if people don't really talk about coming out that way anymore, it's very, very what was the term she used? Unidimensional. Um, yeah. Um, but then my mom, like literally, I broke up with my girlfriend of 2 years, and we lived together, and we had to like break a lease, and it was like a whole fucking thing, and like I helped her move back home on my fucking birthday. Like the whole thing was so. And then she literally didn't even ask me about it like once. Or like with the first time she met my girlfriend, it's actually very comparable to the first time she met my sister's boyfriend. Like the first time she met my sister's boyfriend, me, my sister, her boyfriend, and my mom, we went for breakfast at this place for like everybody's like oof. Uh and we thought like my mom is francophone and my sister's boyfriend is francophone. So we're like, oh, like we'll all speak French together, and there'll be like this like cultural thing that we all share or something. I don't know. I just thought like I knew she was gonna have issues with him because he's not like a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. But like it's not even that. Like she didn't care. She didn't ask him questions. She didn't like, like she just had like zero interest in him or their relationship. Even and at that point they were like they had been living together for 2 years or something like that. First time she met him. Um anyway, so based on that, I never like went out of my way. Like I had like a dinner with my mom and my girlfriend once, and my relationship with my mom was quite bad. So I just ended up like screaming and crying the whole time. And my ex was like, "This is not a good thing for you to do this. Like it seems like you've messed up your mental health like to do this." But so when I compare the way that my mom treated my sister's boyfriend to the way she treated my girlfriend, it's actually identical, which is I don't give a shit. So it's not like a specific lesbophobic thing. She just like I don't know. Um Possible person says, "Why do half of us have the same mom?" I know, right? Anyway, I don't know. It's so bizarre to me because when I was growing up, the message that me and my sister got from my mom was like, "Apostle person, how do you feel about the fact that your mom doesn't give a shit?" Because when I was younger, it was like very, very hurtful to me. But um, the older I get, the more I feel like it's kind of a blessing because she is like so like toxic and manipulative that if she doesn't care and she doesn't stick her nose into anything, then there's like less capacity for her to mess things up and hurt me emotionally, right? At least that's like where I'm at now. Maybe this is like some kind of a denial or something, but that's where I'm at right now. Um and like this essay discussed things in the context of time. I mean, I don't know. Maybe in 10 years I'll have a very positive relationship with my mother and she will like, plan my wedding for me or something. I can't really imagine. I don't know that I'm not that type of person, but whatever. You know what I'm saying? This kind of positive things. But I don't know. But when we were kids, ooh, Lita says, was anyone else raised as an only child by any chance? Yes, Guidance, any of you? Um, but yeah, when we were kids, we had like very, very clear messages. Like, you're not allowed to date anyone until you finished your undergrad. Which I obviously now is because every fucking woman in both of my families is like pregnant before the age of 21. So to me, it's very obvious that my mom was like, don't get fucking pregnant. Like, become financially stable, become before you become pregnant. This was like as an adult now, this is obviously what my mother was trying to enforce in me and my sister. But the result was just like sex is scary, boys are scary, dating is scary, marriage is bad. That was like the result of me and my sister, like this message we got. I literally remember like in the first grade being like, oh yeah, Chelsea has a crush on Jake or something like this. And and my mom like turning to me and my sister and being like, no, like you can't have crushes, like nobody in your class can have crushes, you're too young, like don't talk about that, that's fake. Something like it was like I don't remember the words exactly, but it was like a very harsh reaction. And I remember one time there was this guy in like the second grade who had like long, dirty blonde hair and was very, very good at soccer. I used to play soccer with him at recess. Anyway, for some bizarre reason, I decided that I needed to marry him or something. I don't fucking know. I was a very strange child. And, but anyway, at some point, I said something to my sister when I was at home in front of my mom. Something like, oh, like Jake's hair is nice, something like this. And my mom like flipped her shit. And she was like, I don't know. So we had these like very, very strong messages from a young age, like that this is nothing, no relationships are ever okay at all. So I kind of, me and my sister, we thought when we got to university, and especially because of who we dated, like because my parents are from this like second, well, my dad is like first generation, or my dad is an immigrant. So they had like that mentality of like, in the old country, we were like unsuccessful and like here we're going to do better kind of thing. And that was like pushed onto me and my sister. And my mom had like a similar thing where it was like they came from like extreme poverty. Like a bunch of my great aunts grew up in convents because my great grandmother had no money to feed them. And it was the same thing. It was like, we come from like, you know, um poverty and like you guys are going to do better, right? So there was also this like explicit message that like you're not going to date someone who doesn't have a university degree. You're not going to date someone who isn't like financially successful. You're not like there was this message to both of us from quite a young age. So we were like scared to introduce our mom to our partners because they weren't like, lawyers or whatever. And she literally didn't give a shit, which is like so surprising to me. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, okay. Possible person says she is materially supportive and tries to help in practical ways. And I've had to and I've appreciated that. She's just not there emotionally and I've had to accept that. Yeah. Yeah, Apostle Person, our parents are like the same fucking people. Apostle Person says, "Yep, the don't get married till 25 thing, lol." In her defense, my parents were married at 18 for 18 years and had two jobs and had a job for two of them. Oh, he had a job for two of them. Okay. Yeah. Like my mom literally was like working like in factories and warehouses and shit while she was pregnant with me and my sister like because I was like an accident. Like that's why my parents got married because they were Christians and they got pregnant. Um they got married in between me and my sister being born. So I was at the wedding but my sister wasn't, I think. I can't remember. Um but yeah, they were like super poor. Like my dad and mom have all these stories of like the super sketchy neighborhoods we lived in when I was really little and like this car that had no heat and that like it didn't really work. Like one person had to stand outside and touch something in the engine while the other person like turned it on. Like it was like a whole everything was like the day they brought me home from the hospital, they didn't have any like money so that I slept in the laundry basket when I was like the first couple days I came home because they didn't have a crib or something. Like everything is like, like we had it so bad and you have to do better. And like, I don't know. I just, that kind of stuff fucked with my head way to the point where it like overshadowed any concerns I had about like sexual orientation. Because it was like the concept of any relationship at all. It was so ingrained in me, all of this crap. You know what I mean? I don't know. Oh yes, for sure, Lisa. Lisa says I was an accident too. My dad got a vasectomy immediately after. Lisa said I honestly subconscious impact on a person. No, for sure. I didn't find out until I was like 13 or 14 or something. Cause I also like I never saw like well, my parents' relationship was shit, so it wasn't surprising they didn't like celebrate their anniversary and stuff because they were always like, throwing crap at each other and screaming at each other and stuff. But um I never saw like their wedding video or like photos. Like there was one photo of them both like at the altar, like a staged photo. I never saw any other photos from their wedding. Then when I was like 13 or 14, I was at my grandmother's house and she was like taking out all these photo albums and I was looking at the pictures of my parents' wedding and I was like there's like a fucking baby and I was like is that me? My grandma was like yeah. I was like I was at the wedding. She's like oh yeah, you were born like a year before the wedding. Like I think my mom was pregnant with my sister at the wedding. Um yeah. And I was like, "Oh, so much stuff makes sense right now. So much stuff about the way my mom treats me, about my parents' relationship, like so much stuff makes sense." Anyway, I do think it had like a really big subconscious psychological impact on me. Um, oh no, puzzle person. Puzzle person says, "Fortunately, my mom is a lawyer and a very go-go type A. My dad was a grade A alcoholic bum." Yeah, my mom also is this kind of like go-getter personality. Oh my god, possible person. Holy shit. How old were you when that happened? Did that have like a profound psychological impact on like your um, development? We haven't even talked about the essay and it's been 25 minutes. Okay. Aqua, I appreciate your advice and why you're giving me that advice, but like the things that my mom is doing to hurt me are ongoing. So it's not like these are things in the past that we can just like move on. It's like a current situation. I do think about that. I do think about like, you know, there were positive aspects to my relationship with my mother and like if she were to like die tomorrow, like all the regrets I would have and stuff. But I keep trying. I'm the only person left in the entire family who tries to have like any communication with my mother basically. Um yeah, I think everybody else has her blocked. So, mm, no, you were quite young. Yeah. I don't know, Aqua. Thank you for your advice. I'll like think about it, but okay. So this idea that mothers when they have a baby, if the baby is a boy, they like from the moment of birth, they're accepting that like I'm the caretaker for this boy and at some point he's going to marry a woman and she's going to become the caretaker. So there is this kind of like separation of the self which is more distinct with male children, right? And then it says with girls, the mothers, I mean at least this is what the essay says. With girls, the mother is like, even if he gets married, I'll always be his mom or her mom. I'll always be like the woman in her life that she's closest to. I don't know, I just found that very interesting because, like I keep saying, I keep trying to relate this to my experience with my mother and I don't feel any of it. But um it's interesting because it's almost like an over identification, an over self identification with the daughter to view her as like an extension of yourself as opposed to like an individual. It's interesting because later in the essay she mentions how women have like what's the term she uses? Adjunct status in relation to men. But she is also saying that daughters have adjunct status in relation to their mothers, which was very interesting to me. Mm. How old are you, possible person? You're like 25 or something, right? Yeah. So I like very, very much how she doesn't talk about coming out as like a thing you do one time. Because as anyone, lesbian or bi, will know in the chat, coming out is not a thing you do one time, even to one person, you know? Um, I kind of wish she had defined what coming out means because she uses it in a lot of different ways in the essay. Like, I've discussed this in the past essays in the book that somebody will use like the term identity or will use lesbianism like to mean like five different things in one essay. Um, and I don't know, just gets a bit confusing. But because she described coming out as something the mother can do as well in terms of like not hiding that her daughter's a lesbian from her social circle. I thought that was interesting to like that it's like an act that is done with the other person. Like instead of something being done to the person, it's like a thing you do operatively. Because that makes sense. Like it just makes sense. Mama. All right. I love how she broke it down into the internal, the interpersonal, and the societal. Because I don't know. Like when I was reading this essay, part of what I was thinking was sorry. Part of what I was thinking was I was comparing it to the current societal perspective on coming out. Um yeah, I agree, Aqua. Um the current like now in 2022, it seems to me at least, that the act of coming out has like a social value for both parties, right? If you are someone who has like especially now with all of the many identities, right? If you are someone who has like, oh yeah, I've come out like 5 times to my family. Like I came out like as ace, I came out as like pan gender, blah 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 blah. And then like, I changed my gender, so I came out again. This is like has like like a social value depending on your social circle, right? And so it's seen as like a uniformly positive thing that you came out at all, even if you're going to change your identity in the future, even if it landed you in an unsafe situation, even if you got kicked out. The fact that you did it has a social value. Um, I agree, Julia. Uh, Same thing from the other party, right? Like we see this now with all these liberal. What's that? There's like a Twitter account which I don't support because the Twitter account itself is like very misogynistic. But libs of TikTok, they're very good. The Twitter account is very good at platforming some of these people. But now there's also a social value assigned to being someone that someone has come out to, right? The my daughter came out to me and I filmed it and I reacted so well. Like, look how great I am, right? So the whole thing has become very superficial and performative. It has almost nothing to do with the actual like emotional state of the relationship between the whoever. Um, because to me, like I was thinking of coming out to my parents. I don't want my parents to keep operating on this false assumption of who I am. I want them to accept now that I'm a lesbian. So eventually, and at that time, because I was living in the middle of nowhere and didn't know what I was doing with my future, I literally was like, I don't think I'm going to have a girlfriend anytime in the next couple of years. Like just because of physically where I was located. But um I was like, I want to prepare them now for the eventuality that I will come home with a girlfriend. And I don't know why I'm so like overexposed. I don't like it, but I don't know what to do about it. Yeah, so that was the reasons that I wanted to come out to my parents. Now, there we go. I don't know why unfocused. Now it seems like the reason to come out is to say that I've done that. Not so much because you have like a specific thing you want to accomplish within your relationship with your parents, right? Or I mean, I guess specifically talking about that right now. Yes. And also it's not seen as like an ongoing process. Cuz like again, I'm not trying to be like I'm more enlightened than modern queers. I don't think that. But when I came out, I was thinking of it like in a long-term way. That like, I'm doing this now to prepare for the future. The way that it's seen now is like I did it, that's it. Now I'm the thing and that's it. Um I don't know. So I think it's seen now the conception of coming out and the narrative around it is very one-dimensional. And I literally remember being like on Tumblr as a teenager, which this was like quite a while ago. This was like 2012 or something. Um Thanks, possible person. Be like to have an arrogant perspective on things prevents me from seeing things from um prevents me from being open-minded about things. Um I remember in 2012, 2013 being on Tumblr and making people being like, "Yo, like you should come out, like this is how you should come out, like this is how you can plan your coming out," you know? And I would comment underneath them being like, because I lived in this situation, I would comment underneath them and be like, if you live like in an unsafe situation, like please, this kind of crap, consider your safety first and foremost before you do anything. And so many people would reply being like, you want, like, if people can't come out, they're going to kill themselves. Like, how can you say that? And I'm like, but you might get like beat up, kicked out of your, like, I literally knew this one gay guy when I was a teenager. Actually, I knew two because I knew one in person and I knew one online. These gay guys who were like kicked out of their house when they were like 15 for being gay. And what did they end up doing? They ended up like sucking dick on the street for money because they were homeless. And I'm like, that is not like, it's just so one dimensional. Like the fact that you came out will make everything in your life better. Except, maybe this like sexually traumatic shit and being homeless might actually make your life much, much worse than just like keeping a secret. So like just nuance. But, you know, because it's like this one-dimensional narrative now, having any nuance is seen as you must hate gay people or you want people to kill themselves or some crazy bullshit. Um, and I'm like, no, I'm speaking from like my experience and my opinion, but okay. Um, Aqua says I follow a lady on Twitter who is over 50, never came out, and her secret love died last year, and she has no one to talk to about it except the interwebs. My heart just breaks for her. That's horrible. That's so horrible. Um, That's when, especially when people are like, we live like in a post-homophobia society. I'm like, shut the fuck up. No, we do not. Shut the fuck up. Heretic says, I can barely remember what happened when I came out as trans to my parents. I wrote them a letter. I don't remember talking about it at all, but I know it must, we must have a little bit. Hey, Corner. Puzzle person says, I don't need my family to know the details of my sexual preferences. That was actually, now that you mentioned that, it reminds me, like the dinner where I sat down with my parents and I was like, told them my one sentence, and then they were like, okay, this topic is over. Um, um, I remember thinking, as soon as I use the word lesbian, they're going to think about sex. And I remember thinking, how can I do this without making them think about sex? Because I don't want them to think about that, but also with using like accurate language. Um, I think that would be a really interesting topic for somebody to write an essay on now in current times with porn culture. Um, hey, Rachel. Well, yes, exactly. Rachel, like I was just saying this a few minutes ago. There is now this narrative that, coming out is a thing that must be done no matter what, as soon as like it's like a thing that needs to be done right away. It's very similar actually to how the trans stuff is with like you need to medicalize as soon as possible. It's like it's almost like frantic, the reaction to it. And if you mention safety and tell someone like your safety, your living situation should be your priority before the validation or whatever it is you're seeking from coming out or like getting something off your chest, whatever it is, that your safety should be the priority, not the other emotional aspects of coming out. And people react very stupidly. And like exactly what you're saying, Rachel, it was a dangerous situation. Like, possible person just looking gay has been good enough for me. That's something else too. So when I came out as a lesbian, that's the first time I shaved my head. Cause before that I had like haircuts that I thought would help me pass as a man, which were not a shaved head. Um and I wanted to like do something to like manifest the change in my life in some physical way. Um, but also I was like, especially in Canada. Like, I was in London, England for a week in, like, 2018, and I remember seeing women, like, straight women who were just, like, kind of, like, fashionable or whatever with buzzed heads. But in Canada, you don't really see that. Like, you do, especially, like, among Black women and stuff, but, um, I know what you mean, possible person. This whole, like, having to come out, if you look super gay, you don't need to come out, and that's nice. Um, Short hair and baggy clothes. But, like, that's the thing too. That's why, like, I literally didn't change the way I dressed at all when I came out as a lesbian because everything I was wearing was, like, cargo pants from the men's section and, like, t-shirts from the men's section and all this. So, like, you had an eyebrow slit last summer? That's interesting. Um, Honestly, Rachel, the essay wasn't, like, very painful. It was kind of Freudian, a little bit stupid, actually. It was interesting, though. That was something else, though. We did kind of discuss it, but it was every time it came up, it wasn't like a discussion. At one point, at least a year after I came out, because I was barely ever in Toronto. I think it must have been the next summer. The summer after I came out, yes, that was the summer I went to MFR. The summer I went to MFR the first time. Um, I remember at some point asking my mom something along the lines of like, you know, why did you react that way or something like this. I can't even remember how the conversation went. But at some point she basically said was like, "Oh yeah, I realized you were gay when you were like 5." And so I guess to her, part of her like non-reaction was kind of like this isn't news or something. But to me it was like that's why I like the way she discusses it in the essay of like how it's like a process that you go through together, that it affects both of you individually, it affects your relationship to each other, and it affects the two of you, your relationship to society. Cuz like it reminds me of the Marilyn Fry essay about anger. I don't think I was like exactly, but I did feel no, I think I was angry, but I didn't perceive it as anger at the time. I didn't feel like my mom like uptook my anger. It was like she didn't respect or understand why I was having like heightened emotions. And instead of her being like, "Yeah, I understand why you have heightened emotions about this." She was like, "Yeah, no emotions. What's the big deal?" Um and to me that felt like a rejection of some kind. Um I need to get cargo pants actually. I literally don't have any right now. I ripped my last 2 pairs of cargo pants. Rachel says, "I still have a hard time saying I'm a lesbian to people in real life. Since I transitioned, it's ruined my reputation, and everyone now thinks me being a lesbian is a quote unquote phase." I'm sorry, Rachel. That's a shitty situation. I'm sure if you were like in a different environment around women who you could like on a daily basis talk to face about that your like internal feelings on that would change. Um, Cargo pants are weird. Actually, the last couple pairs of cargo pants I got were for like the men's section at H&M. Sometimes they're a bit long, you have to hem them, but I have like a sewing machine, so I'm fine with that. Um, so we're all Scar from The Lion King. I also have a scar on my eyebrow, but can't see it anymore. Actually, what eye is it on? I also had like well, it's in my old videos. I had like a eyebrow piercing. Highly recommend First Tactical brand to women looking for cargo pants. Clown World, you have made my day. Yeah, I've never been to one of those military supply stores, but apparently they're legit. Um, Remember I mentioned I'm gonna like make another like vest covered in embroidery, but this time only lesbian. I think I need to go to the military supply store to get the jacket to start that. Um, oh, Paul Person. These cargo pants from Costco that you were describing are amazing. but never seem to like be able to find them when I'm there. Um, we all have eyebrow piercings. We all love cargo pants. I'm so sad about my eyebrow piercing. Um, like it got kind of infected, so I just took it out for one night and like filled it with like rubbing alcohol or fucking iodine. I don't fucking know, something for infection. And I woke up in the morning and it was like a completely closed. I was like, fuck. So in the summer, I mostly wear cargo shorts. I actually love cargo pants and cargo shorts because I don't like having like a bag or a backpack or a purse or whatever. So when I'm wearing cargo, I just put like everything in my pants or my shorts. Um, like I actually use them. I don't know. Like somebody said they had trouble taking this seriously because of the Freudian crap. And I kind of agree. Like I'm trying to look through again because this bisexual triangle that I've never heard of that before. So I'm trying to like, take it at face value and make my own conclusions about it. But the concept is just so stupid. Like it's technically a concept put forth by Nancy Chodorow, but it's based on Freud's theory that at 4 or 5 years old, girls use their father relationship with their father to like disidentify with their mothers or something. And I'm like, I don't believe in all this weird Freudian psychosexual, like incestuous psychosexual crap. Um, oh yeah, no, I totally agree, Aqua. Even though I don't like the Freudian stuff, I feel like it was a really good essay. Me, um, Rachel says warning about desert snakes. I I had one pair of Doc Martens. I still have them. I have a pair of Doc Martens, but like somehow the leather like has like cracked in strange ways that it really hurts my feet to wear them. So like I haven't worn them in like years. But I have one pair of Doc Martens. I've never had like actual combat boots though. Um, are you gonna send me freaking boots, Aqua? My sister has the vegan docs, like the red ones. I'm sorry. I'm a size 8. Yeah, they make vegan docs. I think that the UK. No, I have like right now I have like very very nice boots. My winter boots are Eddie Bauer, because I'm a lesbian. And I also have like really really good like hiking shoes. They're Polytech, Polycore, whatever. It's like it looks like fabric but it's waterproof. And they're very lightweight. They're very very comfortable and they're my god. Some expensive brand of shoes, I don't know. But like I have good ones. But they just don't look super dykey. Corner says Freudian psychoanalysis is pure nonsense, and I can't believe people take it as seriously as they do. Yes. Also, several times throughout the essay, she brings up this idea that, like, okay, there is one thing that she brought up in this context that I actually agreed with, but the rest of it was all weird bullshit. So, she brought up the concept that, like, women while breastfeeding might experience some kind of an arousal, right? Just makes sense anatomically, right? And so when this happens with mothers with female babies, they have like a different reaction than when it happens with male babies. And I have actually like I've seen on forums online women being like, how am I supposed to breastfeed my daughter? I don't want to turn her into a lesbian. Or like this kind of insane bullshit. Like in the year 2022, I've seen women saying this shit. So that is definitely a thing. But I'm being attacked by a beagle. Send help. Send pics, yo. What do you mean send help? Send pics. um but the author plays into this Freudian crap and is like, yep, so that makes the mom feel insecure about her heterosexuality or something. And I'm like, because of a baby? Does it? I don't think so. And also, this is the second essay in the book that has this premise. Oh, I know, Julia, it's insane. I know, yes. Yes, Hannah. Thank you. Also, hello, Hannah. Um, yeah. Oh my god. Rachel says, y'all, my mom gave me the whole, we all have those feelings about women, but we don't act on them speech. Mm. I'm sure that fucked with your head a lot. Aqua says, I gotta say, sometimes I think about penis envy and I think about where we are and I wonder if he was onto something, although I'm more of a Jungian because I dig that collective unconscious. Yeah. Honestly, I haven't really read much Freud. Everything that I know about Freud is like tangential to this, that it's like a third party mentioning it. Um, oh, I tried to watch that Netflix thing, but obviously it's very like, hyped up and shit. Yeah. Um but yeah, also so in this essay and in a previous essay, the concept this another Freudian concept that women that in like the physical contact of the mother and daughter like when she's an infant, that there is some kind of an arousal on both parts. Now, in the first essay where this was mentioned, the arousal was explained in a few different ways because it wasn't just like it was mentioned as like a physical like a heightened sensation in your body, not necessarily sexual. Like, people feel heightened sensation in their body for many reasons, like fear, passion, panic, whatever. And it was like, when you're an infant, you're like developing and you feel these things with your mother and whatever. And I was like, okay, I get kind of where you're coming from. This essay mentions it in terms of like you both feel like a sexual attraction and you like block that out and repress it. And so when you come out as a lesbian later in life, it like re-triggers these insecurities from both your subconscious because you were the baby experiencing that and your mother's consciousness because she consciously experienced that. And I'm like, what in the actual fuck are you talking about? I obviously have not had a baby. Obviously don't remember being a baby, but I feel like this is all a lot of bullshit. This to me is a very very male identified perspective. Um yeah, Rachel, I'm so sorry. Oh, a couple of you sent me the email to join the Discord server. So I'm just going to do it again because I know a couple of you are here who if you want to join my Discord server, please email me in the topic. Just write Discord or Discord server or something. And then in the body of it, be like, I'm possible person. I know you already emailed me. But be like, I'm Aquamarina from, well, I also know you're, whatever. Just be like, I'm this person from the YouTubes. And then I will like, when I make the Discord server, probably this weekend, I will do like a voice activation with you. Yeah, sure, drop whatever you want, Clown World. But I will do like a voice activation verification with you and add you in, and then it will be like private. Um, oh, bye, Matt Adam. Um, but yeah. So like email me that you want to join the Discord, and then I will like verify you and add you into the private new Discord that I'm gonna make this weekend probably. Okay. Um Rachel says men can't understand the chemical components of emotional connection between mothers and babies. Yes, very true. Um, but I mean, she didn't really mention it that much. um, do you need mods? I mean, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Rachel, do you know how Discord works? Like, I mean, we talk on Discord, but do you know how like to run a server? I'm very out of my depth. I thought I'll just figure it out as I go along, kind of like how I did YouTube. Okay. I don't. Something. Oh, bye, Matt Adam. Something that I found a bit like this is most of the essays in most of the essays in this book at some point refer to sexual preference, sexual choice, choice of partner, choice of sexuality. They use these terms. And I think I mean it's hard to know because I don't know who these authors I don't know these authors like, personally. But I think for some of them I think for some of them, when they use these terms like preference and choice about partners, what they're trying to get at is like women's sexual autonomy, right? That like you're not just doing this because it's like your only option. I think that that's kind of what some of them are getting at. And obviously, a bunch of them who seem to be bisexual, well, not a bunch, I think two authors so far. Obviously, the two bisexual authors that we know of, the way they refer to choice is like, I'm attracted to both men and women, but I've decided I'm only going to date women, so I'm calling myself a lesbian, that kind of thing. And this I just felt like it was brought up a lot in this essay. Like she almost every time or like she actually used the word lesbianism a lot. In the phrases where she didn't use lesbianism, she often said like choice of sexuality or preference of partner or something. And it rubbed me the wrong way. Um yeah, exactly, possible person. Possible person says I just glossed over it as cultural. Defining it as a choice was considered empowering then. But also I've tried to take that interpretation, but it's clear that some of the authors are thinking of it literally as a choice. Um, this I think will be relevant to a bunch of you guys because we all have like the same mother apparently. But she brings up in this section the intrapsychic, the mother's response section. She brings up the concept of here, a mother teaches a female child that her task is to nurture others, which the daughter often learns by mothering her own mother. This can occur in a variety of ways, including parentification, conforming to the good little girl image expected of her, and suppressing any anger towards her mother. Embedded deeply in our psyche is the expectation that it is natural for one's daughter to nurture a man more than she does her mother. If she nurtures another woman in the same way, however, many hostilities or longings can be aroused in her mother. Um, it's so interesting to me because, like, in my relationship with my ex, very, very clearly, her mother was like, I am not capable of mothering her. Oh, thanks. My paycheck. Thank you. um, yeah, my ex's mom clearly was at a state where, like, I'm not capable of being like her caretaker anymore. So she was like happy to be like, I'm passing her off to me. This mentions it the opposite way that the mother is so used to being cared for by the daughter, like if this hypothetical mother in this scenario, that when the daughter is suddenly directing her emotional attention to caring for her girlfriend, then the mother is jealous. Um, this makes a lot of sense to me, especially with narcissistic mothers. Um, I'm I'm just glad she brought it up because I've never thought about it that way, and it makes a lot of sense. Um, mm. Rachel says, the way some of these essays are discussing sexuality as more choice based reminds me of how I really struggled with my own sexuality and how others influenced me to stay in the closet and choose straight. Learning about attachment disorders last year really opened my eyes to my relationship with my mother and how that influenced my romantic connections. Oh my god, don't even start with that shit. I tried to start researching this stuff when I was like in my relationship because like I mentioned yesterday, I thought I would like learn so much in the relationship, but then when I actually got into it, I was like, but actually both of us have no idea what the fuck is going on. So I wish we had like some kind of outside perspective on like things that are healthy or behaviors and patterns we were developing that were unhealthy and stuff like that. So I researched this stuff and I was like, oh shit, like am I doomed forever? About the attachment types and all that. Yeah, wait one second. No, it's only one of my paychecks, but it's not as much as I would like. Um, all right. Need some more chai. You know what drink I tried from Starbucks yesterday? I got an iced coffee with a lot of cream because I actually don't even like the taste of coffee and toffee nut. I got like a lot. I got like 8 pumps of toffee nut or something, and it was so good. Like it tasted like candy. That's the year I was born, Aqua. I don't know what you're saying, Clown World, but spasiba. I don't think you're old. I just think I'm really young. Okay. Oh, I loved this. Oh, it's chai. Okay. um, I love this concept that she brought up. This to me was a very female identified feminist perspective on things. Um, so she brings up Nancy Chodorow's concept of heterosexual asymmetry. So basically, women are trained to be nurturers and men are trained to be like takers, right? So women prepare their daughters from a young age to cope with their situation, which is I take care of the children and I take care of the husband, and it's not reciprocated by the husband. He doesn't take care of me emotionally. He doesn't take care of like this kind of thing. So that the mother is training the daughters to be the same that she is, right? Um, I have a lot of complex views on this concept of the mother preparing the daughter for what the mother currently is living through because it's so complicated. On one hand, the mother is like, I think on a subconscious level, it's like it's unavoidable that you're going to end up in a heterosexual relationship. And like, this is how I handle things. It's unhealthy. It's not good for me. This is how I handle things. You need to learn to handle things the same way because you're going to be in the same situation someday. And I think ultimately that does like a lot of harm to girls. Like, how many girls whose mothers were sexually abused trained them to like be able to handle abuse. I don't mean explicitly or intentionally, but on a subconscious level. This kind of stuff. Um, I don't know. So I think it really messes with little girls and they're growing up. But so yeah, the mother. So in this situation where the mother has been preparing the daughter to be the assumed heterosexual, to be in this heterosexual asymmetry, um, when the daughter comes out as a lesbian, the mom, according to the essay, becomes kind of jealous because she is like, holy shit, my daughter is not going to become the only caretaker of the family to never really be taken care of by anyone except her potential daughter, maybe in the future. My daughter is going to get something that I didn't get, right? And also, I think to like kind of resent, like, I put all this work into training you not to survive heterosexuality and you're like squandering that or something. Um, I just thought it was like a very, very interesting concept, and I'm really glad that she explained it in that way. It was great. Um, Rachel, same. Rachel says my mother was neglectful and abusive, so I not to rely on anyone. Yeah. Um, but my externalization and internalization of that was like very, very out of sync. Um, but yeah, like I learned to be like so emotionally independent that like literally when bad things happen around me, I take it personally and feel guilty, like I should have done something to prevent it because like that's the way I grew up. It's like nothing was within my power, but bad things happened, and I was like, I should be able to fix that because I don't want bad because like nobody would do anything to stop it, like the parents. So it was like, um, Rachel says my mother has a lot of resentment for me being a lesbian and for being unmarried. Yeah, I don't know honestly. Like, I wish I had like a relationship with my mother because honestly, I think my mom really was scared that me and my sister were gonna get pregnant young, like everybody else in her and my dad's family. And I think she was also really scared that we would be like sexually traumatized by men. Understandable. I am in well, she doesn't know that I've been like groomed online and all that crap. But I'm in a unique situation of I'm not going to get pregnant, right? And I'm not going to be sexually traumatized by men because I'm not entering relationships with them. I mean, at least I think that's like from her perspective. I don't think I don't think her fear was ever like stranger danger, you know what I mean? Um so in a lot of ways I've kind of become the thing that my mom would want me to be, right? But like there's like no relationship there. So I don't even know what she thinks about that. Get married to a woman, problem solved. Thanks, Julia. Amazing advice. Possible person says probably one of the more helpful mental shifts in my relationship with my mom was finding the space between perfect and evil. She's a person. That has been my issue. I don't think I'm there yet. I like fluctuate between like evil and she's a person. Okay. I found this very interesting. I don't have like a lot of analysis of it, but I just found this paragraph so fucking interesting. Listen to this. There are other positive intrapsychic reactions a mother may have towards a daughter's lesbianism. When a daughter chooses women as her primary love objects, she is affirming her mother as valid and important. Society sees women as unimportant, and a lesbian daughter is affirming the introjected mother within herself and saying, "You have value." That was so fucking interesting to me. Um, because you know how like a lot of women, like the concept of like radical feminism to them is threat because it means they have to confront all like the negative shit they've been through or they're currently going through and stuff. And how that's like upsetting to them. This kind of reminds me of that because it's like when if the mother sees that the daughter really like loves and prioritizes and cherishes women, often, well, not often, in my opinion, in a way that men cannot do to other women. But she sees that her daughter is like this now, and she reflects upon herself, the mother. You know, I've never been treated that way. I've never been respected that way, prioritized that way. And to kind of feel like, like so like a profound psychological shift because of that. Just very fucking interesting to me. Honestly, I wish this essay was like a whole book. I wouldn't agree with all of it, but the concepts that this author brings up are amazing. I would love for it to like be really, really expanded. Ugh, Hannah, what bullshit. Hannah says my mom told me constantly, don't get married, don't have kids. Wish I didn't. My mom told me the similar things. So I didn't. Mom now says I'm going to die sad and alone with no friends. Like, maybe that's mom's fault a little bit. Well, that's Aqua's bringing up kind of like this intergenerational female socialization or like intergenerational like female trauma or something that the mothers pass down to the daughters. I would love to read like a book about that. Like eventually, we have many books in the future, but um yeah, I think that's like a huge topic on its own, just like the intergenerational stuff between women. Um yeah. I'm going to read the next paragraph after that. Yeah, Hannah. I feel that. Women have been taught to repress their anger, especially their anger toward men. When a lesbian comes out to her mother, this can affirm mother's repressed anger toward men, which is partly anger at the lack of options afforded to women. Through stating by example another way of life, an option that mother never saw as viable or even existent. Thus, mother's reaction to daughter's lesbianism may be ambivalent. She may simultaneously feel rejected or abandoned, and yet may feel somehow validated by her daughter's choice of women. I just thought that's so interesting. Like, it's like Aqua was saying, it's like so complex, the interplay. I've never really thought about it this deeply before. Um, I'm going to once again recommend this book, Will I Ever Be Good Enough, about narcissistic mothers and how damaged women damage daughters. Oh, yo, while you're all here. Oh, my internet connection is bad. But why? Okay, while you're all here. Tomorrow, Rachel and I are doing a sister space together. The next 2 weeks, there will be sister space. On the 30th, there will not be a sister space. But the next 2 weeks, there's going to be. So, I haven't scheduled it. I meant to do it yesterday. I totally fucking forgot. I scheduled like 10 more essays, but I forgot to do the sister space. Um, so tomorrow at noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. GMT, Rachel and I will be here doing the sister space. Okay. Um, that's my issue to Aqua. Aqua is talking about if I think about my mom being so messed up, but also wonderful, I don't know if I can handle knowing why she was so anxious and scared and yet stubborn and strong. Yeah, exactly. Like, my mom obviously is very resilient. And we'll talk about something, Rachel. We can talk about coming out to our moms. But yeah, I have the same thing. Like, my mom obviously really, really damaged me and my sister. But when I think about why what she was doing was her coping mechanisms, was her survival strategy, right? Um And to develop such toxic survival strategies, you must have been through something really fucking horrible. So Aqua says, is there any more dangerous job than being a mother? I think not. I know. You are like the number one influence on your child's life. It is like a very, very powerful position to be in. All right. So in the next section, she talks about the daughter's reaction to coming out. And she basically says, women, when they come out to their mothers, they enter the situation with their own internalized homophobia, like, close to the surface. So even a small negative action, you will perceive it as like blown the fuck out of proportion because you are in a state of like, I'm horrible because I'm a lesbian or whatever. So even any little small thing like push you over the edge. Um um I like her bringing that up. I feel like a lot of people don't very complex, nuanced, deep analysis of like what is coming out, what is the experience, what is it like. Rachel says, I feel so sad for the mothers of the children I take care of. They work so hard that I literally see their children more than they do. Working mothers have it hard. Yeah, I totally agree. I have like complex and ever evolving feminist thoughts about like the situation of mothers in society. It's very, very up in the air, and I don't even want to make any comments on it because I feel like I don't have enough information to. Part of it is like my separatist politics. Like a lot of radical feminism or lesbian separatism or whatever is very, very theoretical. And then like motherhood in society is not a theoretical problem. It is a practical issue. And so like with me in my life, I am able to like coalesce my theory with my practice in my life, right? But when it comes to like looking at mothers in society, like I haven't been able to completely like straighten all out like my theory and beliefs and like the actual practical reality, if that makes sense. Um, yeah, exactly, Julia. Like it's hard to exactly. Okay, I'm gonna read this sentence. Exactly how I feel, Aqua. Women need a system which we do not have, like a support system that is female centered, because the nuclear family male centered, right? Yeah. Um, and it's meant to isolate, and I think that women need the opposite of isolation, like in everything in their life. Like I think women need like more interconnectedness, um, especially when it comes to like child rearing and stuff. Um, I think we had it once in goddess times, but I have no idea how to get back to it. It's lost in the sands of time. Yeah. At some point, who knows? Maybe like next year. We will event those um like ancient history books written by feminists about like, what the matriarchal culture used to be or whatever, but that is like far off in the future from my plans of reading right now. Okay, I'm going to read this. On the positive side, a lesbian daughter can feel that she is validating womanhood, rejecting the message that dad is better than mom, and escaping from a double bind in which society, via her mother, has put her. Mother has subtly passed on an underlying societal message. Get your needs met the way I did. Be heterosexual, but don't expect men to meet your needs. Your needs can only be met well by women. A woman can resolve this double bind in a healthy way by becoming a lesbian and finding a greater potential to have her needs met, both on a sexual and an affectional level. Like the heterosexual asymmetry thing, I remember being like very young. This was mentioned 2 essays ago. I remember being quite young and mentioning it and being like, this doesn't seem when I was like 6 and people being like, well, like you'll grow up, like you'll think differently when you're an adult, like you'll want to have babies and get married. And I was like, "Mm." um, but yeah, this thing where it's like, again, I don't like the language of choice, but this idea that because the daughter is like telling the mom, you know what, I prioritize and respect women like in my life on like a very fundamental level in a way that other women do not because she's a lesbian. That this is validating the womanhood and rejecting the message that the dad is better than a mom and escaping from the double bind of the asexual of the heterosexual asymmetry, not the asexual heterosymmetry. Yeah. Um yeah, clown world. I'm in the generally yeah, the generally communal situations are better for child rearing than the nuclear family. Yeah, I'm in the same place as you. Um, yeah, nuclear families are horrible. They're like the worst vector for transmitting trauma. Like literally the worst possible vector for it. If you look at the mechanism of like how kids are traumatized and then they grow up and they marry other traumatized people and then they like make a home together and they have kids and then they do the same shit to their kids like stuck with each other. Like it's just if you look at the way it like works, like the mechanism of it, it's like the worst possible fucking situation. Um, this idea that I thought that was so interesting that there's like the bad kid and the good kid. I was always the bad kid compared to my sister. Um, and I am still now because like she got more education and a better job than me, so I'm still the bad kid. Uh, but this idea that in the family that there's like a bad kid and a good kid, and that when the lesbian comes out, if she wasn't the good kid, now the role is reversed. That she is now like the scapegoat, the lesbian. But even through doing that, she is in a way behaving like the good kid because she has facilitated for the other less offensive kid to become the better kid. I just thought that was really interesting the way the therapist brought that up. Um, and to try to see this as like I've done something good for the family, I guess. Um, when she first brought up the grieving process, my gut reaction was like, "Wow, that's offensive." I think because all the wokeness, but no, she was totally fucking right. There is like a grieving process because your daughter isn't dead because she's a lesbian. The future you imagine for your daughter is gone because she's not gonna get married and be straight. Um, and she briefly mentions it from the lesbian perspective, not the mother's perspective. And I thought that is so important because I think for me, and I'm sure for a bunch of you, my like bisexual phase, like my 1 year when I was between 19 and 20 before I came out, literally, I think was me like very slowly accepting one, that my own interests and desires and whatever matter. They matter enough that even though I could survive being with a man, I mean, anybody could survive anything. Even though I could survive being with a man, that doesn't, and society expects me to be with a man, that doesn't mean I need to even consider men ever. That was like a big part of my head, my bisexual phase was like accepting that. Um, big part of my bisexual phase, I think, was like internalizing that the fantasies I had about what my future would be like are all gone. Because I mentioned this before in some of my older videos. If some of you guys have watched like my first 20 videos or whatever, um, that's I had like a very very rich fantasy life, right? Which apparently is quite common for lesbians, because they are like very very repressed, so they go off in their minds to fill in the blanks of the stuff that they're repressed about. Um, but I had this fantasy, that I was going to transition, and I basically wanted to be like some kind of skinny anime boy type, like a very twinky sub whatever, all this disturbing things. And that I would have some kind of guy who was like gay or bi, who, I'm not technically male, but like he loves me and whatever. And like he takes care of me and I take care of him. And like I had this whole like very rich fantasy of what my future was going to be like once I finished my transition. Like it was all wrapped up in each other. So even I think that's why like the decision to come out as a lesbian, or like the epiphany that I was a lesbian, and the decision to like detransition happened at the same time, because it was like accepting that that fantasy was false and that wasn't actually something that I wanted, was like, oh, so then I just want to be with women. Like if I let go of this fantasy that I've been building up, because like the way I describe it in my YouTube video of like why lesbians think they could be gay trans men or whatever. Um oh shit, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, it was that I thought it was like inevitable that I would end up with a man. Like I didn't even think it was inevitable. It just felt inevitable. Like it wasn't even like a conscious thought process. I was just like, well, I'm gonna end up with a guy. And so I came up with like all of these really rich fantasies of like how I'm gonna make that thing survivable or enjoyable. And once I accepted that I don't even need to do that thing and the fantasies are lies, then I was like, what's left? It's just that. So I do think that was a kind of like, I don't know if grieving process is the right term exactly, but I do think that it was like a kind of acceptance. And that's what she talks about, like, denial, anger, acceptance, all like the grieving process. Um, thank you, Aqua. Yeah. Uh, yeah, so I'm glad that she brought it up, but I kind of wish she would have expanded on it more from the lesbian's perspective. Because she very briefly mentions the lesbian is grieving her presumed heterosexual future. I mean, honestly, maybe that's a good topic for like an entire essay. Ugh, Rachel, that's so horrible. Rachel says, Benji, that's been my experience with acceptance over the last 2 years. It is almost a grief for the loss of a goal that was never your own. Ugh, Aqua, you have such a way with words. There's one. I have to be there at 3:30. I need to get food. What time? Okay, well, I should end the stream like in the next half an hour for sure. Um, I love words. Me too. Like lexicographers are very hot. Like Susie Dent from any Brits in the house from oh god, what's it called? What's it called? Oh my god, what is that fucking game show? It's like a game show with like words and math. I can't do math. Well, I mean, I try and do math. I don't, but like when I follow along at home and do the word stuff, I'm like Susie Dent, this amazing British lexicographer. Literally, her job is to like edit the Oxford English Dictionary. Countdown. Thank you, Hannah. To like and to like add words to it and shit. She teaches at Oxford, I think. I'm like, how can you not like how can you words are so fucking cool. Like lexicography, like all that stuff. Rachel, you also know Countdown. We are like really weird because we're not English. Like who the fuck watches Countdown that's not British? Anyway, I really, really love words. Like I am technically very above average when it comes to my linguistic skills. I think that applies much more in writing than speaking, but and I am technically like way below average when it comes to my mathematical skills. Linguisexual. Like aren't all lesbians linguisexuals? Get it? Okay, okay. Um but yeah, also when she brought up the mourning I killed you, Julia. When she brings up the mourning aspect, this too, it's like I compare everything to the current, right? And the current, um, the contemporary perspective on this coming out and the parents' side of things. GCs will talk about the parents mourning their child, right? And it's like, honestly, that is pretty identical to, on the emotional level at least, to your kid coming out as gay because it's the same thing. You are mourning the future you wanted for them. Obviously, like what the child is actually going through is radically different. But from the parent's perspective, you're mourning the future you wanted for your kid that they're not going to have now, right? And it's seen as like if the parent needs any time to process this, the parent needs like regardless of trans or gay or whatever. If the parent needs any space to be away from the child, has any period of like questioning or challenging, anything like that, the parent is evil, end of story, no questions. And I'm like, I don't know. I think my relationship with my dad is like a pretty good example of how things can evolve. From him, like, I remember at one point he had some kind of sensitivity training at his job or HR or some shit. I don't fucking know. And basically, they were like, you need to respect like all the LGBTQIA plus people. And I remember him one day coming home and like ranting, kind of like, like, why are we? Because it was like the beginning of woke crap. I don't know when this was, like 2013. And he was like, kind of like, why are we being forced to talk about this like in the workplace? It has nothing to do with anything we're doing at the work. Like, all that kind of shit. To go from like that of him like being like basically I don't want to discuss it to like, you know, I'm happy that you're happy with the women that you date or whatever. It's like a huge evolution, right? And like he just needed time. And that's okay. Like anyway. Like it's not a good thing in the current narrative that if a parent needs time to process coming out, that they're automatically evil and you should cut all contact with them and they cut them out of your life and that's it. Like, if you think about it, like in the macro, like in the long term for like the entire LGBT, that's not a good thing. Like, even, okay, like I'm a millennial, right? Millennials have a lot of issues with like income and housing, right? With like, given what the current rate of pay is for most jobs, and given that we all have student debt, and given the cost of living, like we're all kind of fucked, right? Most of my friends that I know who live in Toronto live with their parents because it's so fucking expensive. Like, how many people their parents support them when it comes to their education. Like this thing of like cut off your parents if they have even like a tiny little negative reaction, like immediately cut them off forever. I'm like, you need to think about it in the long term. Like I literally remember in high school when my counselor was encouraging me to move a into a youth shelter. I remember literally thinking, you know what? I'm in like a lot of psychological pain right now. But graduating high school is really, really important. Graduating high school is so important that you know what? I think it's worth it for me to suffer this psychological pain until I can graduate high school and then decide what I'm going to do. Because I was thinking like for the future, I want to have a job where I don't want to end up in a situation where I have no one to depend on and I can't depend on myself financially. And I'm just like, I don't know. I just feel like the whole narrative on coming out these days is like so fucking short-sighted. I don't know. Rachel says also the nuance of maintaining a relationship with someone who doesn't accept your sexuality but isn't harmful to you. Yes. Like that is like true liberalism or whatever. That like people have different opinions than me, different thoughts, things that I actually find offensive, but I can still have a conversation with them. I can still acknowledge that this person is like my uncle or dad or whatever, you know? Yes, Rachel. Okay, then it comes to this thing about like the mother's role in society is to teach the daughter how to be a woman, like woman, right? And to be a woman is to be heterosexual. This is a huge part of the social role of what womanhood is. Um, and so they're seen as basically failures or bad mothers if their daughters turn out to be lesbians. Honestly, when I was reading this section, I was thinking, you know what? I think we've come pretty far because at least generally in the Western world, I think a lot of people at this point have the perspective of like people are born gay. So it's not like a failure of parenting if your kid comes out as gay. I mean, generally, obviously not everyone, but generally, I think society is at that point when it comes to thinking about sexuality. So I think this specific thing maybe is less of an issue. This like motherhood, like failure of motherhood to produce a lesbian. Um, but I am glad she brought it up. Um, yeah, and she also brings this concept that the mother and the daughter are like so over identified with each other, like fused really, I think is the correct word. That when the daughter comes out as a lesbian to the mom, it's like she literally says that the mom almost interprets her as like a Martian or something. She uses the word Martian because she is like, you are so like over identified with this daughter that you guys are the same in like every way. And now like in this your daughter is completely different from you in a way that you don't understand. And so it's like a psychosocial rejection of the daughter, like, on a subconscious level or something. Um, I thought that was so interesting. Yeah. So Rachel brought this up, and then everybody is agreeing, and I also agree. Rachel says, literally, so many trans youth make themselves homeless because their parents misgender them. Yeah. Rachel says, how is that not actually worse for so called trans people? Encouraging them to put themselves in less safe situations. Very, very true. And like, again, I keep coming back to finances. So many trans identified people are really, really mentally unwell and really, really financially insecure. And so to me, when I look at like the trans community and I'm like, what are their actual real issues? To me, their actual real issues are like getting high quality, stable, accessible, long-term mental health care. That is one of their big issues, I think. Like, and I mean real mental health care, right? I think another one of their big issues is like financial security. You know, the whole thing that Tims are supposed to go through a period of being like a sex worker or whatever, as like a rite of passage. That is because of like the intrinsic fact that trans people, trans identifying people generally are financially insecure, are homeless and shit, right? So many of the trans people I knew when I was a teenager, they were like 18 and they needed to have a job so they could like rent a room because they were homeless or whatever. And like the only jobs they could get were like sex toy shops or like kink clubs and stuff like that. And they're like 18-year-olds. And it's like they put like a sex positive spin on things. But clearly they're only in this situation because they have no other option because they're visibly trans. People don't really want to, well, at least back when I was a teenager, people didn't really want to hire like visibly trans people for like I mean, at least in the city, the like entry level jobs that are easy to get are all customer service. But if you are like visibly trans, they didn't want you in customer service. And so then the best job for you if you're visibly trans is like kind of like a warehouse or a factory or something. But if you live in the city that you don't really there isn't like warehouses and factories like in the city that much. They're all like in the suburbs. Anyway, but I was like, so I look at the trans community and I see one of the big issues is financial security. And so this whole thing of like get away from your parents as soon as possible, I'm like, this is not a long-term plan for how am I going to be independent from my parents. Like, I remember so many people actually this is brought up in Schreier's shitty book. um that there was this one tiff I think from Boston who went to Columbia or something. There's this one tiff who when she finished her undergrad, she cut all contact with her parents. And the way Schreier talks about it is like she used them, like she wanted to like take their money and like fuck off, and like she didn't reciprocate like the appreciation they had for her, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, but this is like a practical way to do things that you decide when is the right time to make your move based on like your future plans for your life, right? I don't know. Like I think of all of the trans people I know who didn't graduate high school or who graduated high school but were homeless for a long time or stuff like that because of this whole like when you come out if it's not perfect everybody hates you. And I think about the long-term impact and I'm like if you could have like sucked it up for another year and not come out to your family or like come out to your family and accepted that there's mixed reactions and like sucked it up for a year and finished graduating high school or like when your mom had a negative reaction to you coming out, like sat down and have real conversations with her for months. Like really like work on it while she's continuing to let you live with her while you're at university or whatever. Like whatever it is. Um I don't know. And so you guys are all mentioning how the this is a mechanic to isolate people. When they're isolated, they become more dependent on the group, right? This is the purpose of this in the contemporary setting. Um yeah. Rachel says it's the perpetuation of instability, which increases mental illness and makes one more dependent on the group that accepts you. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Just reading these books from like the 80s or the 70s about lesbians and stuff, it's so clear that the lesbians, or even talking, I've met some lesbians who were like in their 60s and 70s who came out later in life, like when they were like 30 or not really, like 40, 50, 60 years old. And they're like, yeah, so like when I graduated high school, I signed up for the military because there even though there was like a strict dress code and everything, at least I knew I would like not be forced into marriage and I could be financially independent. Or they're like, you know, when I was in academia and I was trying to build up my reputation, I purposely didn't come out in the 80s because I knew it would like really make it harder for me. But once I, got a tenure position, then I came out. Right? So like the old school method of thinking about like what do I want in the long term and what do I do now to get that goal instead of like coming out for its own sake and then all this crazy overreacting crap. Um She also brings up the concept of how, the whole Madonna horror thing and whatever, like the virgin horror complex, um, and society's views on women being sexual, right? Like the appropriate way for women to be sexual is to be passive, right? And so even saying I'm a lesbian, this is not a passive thing, right? Never mind even having the sex, even saying like I have a preference, or the word, their language is getting to me, saying that this is the way I am, right? Even that is viewed as like a non-passive thing. So like from the get-go, that there is this, not only are you not conforming in terms of your behavior, like you're not being heterosexual, but even in your social behavior, you are not conforming by being passive and docile and being ashamed. Um, and this leads back to what I was mentioning before, which is like even mentioning anything lesbian, people think of like actual sex acts, right? They don't think about like, women dating each other. They think of like actual sex, like porn. So how this is like an issue for the mother, right? And this is like another like failure of motherhood, kind of, that you're supposed to be ashamed of anything sexual, but you can mention your orientation without shame. And so because women are supposed to be like sexually and socially docile, even saying like I'm a lesbian is viewed as like flaunting or making a big deal out of something. So then here's a section about treatment considerations. Uh she talks about how a lot of the times between a parent and a child, even as adults, they will like slip back into like their behavior or mentality of when they were children, and that this is like a really with the coming out process is like how are you going to react and how are they going to react based on their reaction. How is your mindset going to change in that situation to like prepare for that. I definitely feel that. Like, to me the most tangible example of this is literally if I'm staying in the same house where, well, I haven't like stayed with my mom in like 4 or 5 years, but I was staying at my dad's house. If I have like an alarm set, like it's subconscious. If I have an alarm set and I know that he's home, I will sleep through the alarm. If I have an alarm set here, like where I live in my house, I will always wake up like at 4 in the morning. I'm waking up because my alarm goes off, and it's like completely subconscious. Like I can't control it. Um, but yeah, I noticed that with my mom too. Like when I'm with my mom, I fall into this like the mentality I had as a teenager, and I don't like that obviously. Because also I was just like a very dysfunctional person as a teenager, so it makes like navigating life harder to fall into that mentality. Like even the most extreme thing mentioned, the most extreme reaction mentioned in the whole essay is that following the daughter coming out, the mom might offer to like pay for her to have like therapy or to like get her cured or something. And she says her conclusion to this section is the event of the event of disclosure can end in a full-scale conflict that closes off communication for a time. Like literally actual conversion therapy to her is not necessarily the end of anything. And like I get that it's like, this is like the mid 80s, so opinions were quite different. But I know, Aqua. That's what I mean when you were like, "I'm old." I'm like, "No, you're not old. I'm just like a baby." um, um, but yeah, to her, even this thing, which is like morally reprehensible, is not necessarily the end of the parent-child relationship. That it can be like worked on and evolved and shit like that. Um, so I like how she comes back to this like the mourning process, which I think could also be reframed as like the accepting process, and how the mother accepting that the daughter is a lesbian is like a process she goes through, and the daughter being emotionally involved in that, like going through all the steps with her. Um, it can be like a bonding for both of them. So it's not only that the mother now accepts that the daughter is a lesbian, and the daughter now accepts that the mother has whatever opinion or position about that. It's that they together have bonded over the experience of the coming out. To me, that was like so fucking refreshing. I have never thought about it in those terms before. And that to me seems so fucking healthy. It seems amazing. Um, you have an amazing work ethic. I hope they know it. I hope they're paying you for it. Um, on I I'm Mennonite, so it's from it's like genetic, I bet. But I was like so dysfunctional and mentally ill for like my whole fucking life that it wasn't until like 2.5 years ago that I actually became like my like mentality about work shifted from being like, oh, why am I forced to do this? Like it's not fair to like, oh, so I know that like this can be my expected income based on this, and like this is gonna be the expected, like not even necessarily financially, but like this is gonna be like what I get from doing this, and like that's worth it. Like my mentality is completely shifted on it. I think it's just because I've gotten older. Like I think a big part of it was, like, how dysfunctional I was. Like, like, psychologically, it was, like, so fucking dysfunctional. Like, even, like, having a shower before I went to class in university was, like, an impossibility most of the time. But, like, um, yeah, I've become a workaholic. Like, I think I told you guys when I first started streaming again in January that, like, at the time, I actually was working 7 days a week and I had 3 jobs. Um, I'm also planning to work obsessively next year, but I'm planning to schedule it in a very specific way that I think will be, like, less burnouty. Okay, whatever. Let's keep going. But thank you, Aqua. You're always very flattering. Uh, yeah, I did that for 3 months. Um, I have like the job that I have now, like my morning job that I do now. I had that. Um, and then I had like my evening job, which I have now still. But um, honestly, I'm kind of glad I did it because I proved to myself that I can do that. So in the future, if I'm ever like at a point where I'm only working 20 hours a week or something, um, and I'm like, "Oh, my life is so hard." I can, like, look back and be like, "Actually, you used to work 60 hours a week, so shut the fuck up, and you survived that just fine," like, you know? I think it gave me, like, some perspective is what I'm saying. Okay. Right, okay. So, something that goes back to this, idea that, when you're there's a couple of things tied together, that when you come out to the mother might have a negative reaction, but why is she having the negative reaction? Maybe she's having the negative reaction because she's scared for you, because she is like it's like from a place of care, her negative reaction, right? But if you if you if you are in that place where you are very anxious because you're coming out to her and you have all of your own negative feelings about lesbianism like right at the surface, then you will interpret that negatively. Like you will take that negative reaction and be like, so see, look, she hates me just like I hate myself, whatever. Also, Oh, also, this thing of like you will fall into the mentality of like you were a child with your mother, like you will fall back into this dynamic. That too, when you have the negative reaction, it will come off like as like, the kind of criticism that like a mother will have for like a child, instead of like we're both adults and like this is what's happening right now. Um, so I just liked how she brought this. Oh, Lisa, you're still here. Hi, Lisa. Brought this perspective to it that just because someone has a negative reaction doesn't mean they're actually feeling negative things. There could be a lot of reasons why they have that. And your interpretation of that might be like because of your own feelings that have nothing to do with what they're actually with your what your mother is actually feeling. I thought that was like very great. Benji, I can't recall, was there a religious factor in your family? Yeah. I didn't grow up hyper religious. But I grew up like my dad's family are they're not like there's different denominations of Mennonite. They're not a specific denomination of Mennonite that's very conservative. But and they have loosened up a lot because like I saw them for the first time in 10 years in January. They've loosened up a lot. Like when I was a kid, none of them had televisions, and now one of my youngest cousin, or no, well in that family he's the youngest one. But one of my younger cousins is now in college studying like video game design or something. So clearly there's like been a huge fucking shift. But yeah, I remember, conversations about like, you don't have a son, so you have to keep having babies, and like women aren't supposed to work outside the home. I remember my aunts screaming at my mom because she wasn't wearing a skirt and how she's like ungodly and she's like bringing shame to their home and all this crap. So even though I didn't like grow up in a religious environment, like I would go there on the weekends and like see all this crap. And then also my mom's family is Catholic, like French Catholic, but um they're kind of more like culturally Catholic than religiously Catholic. So, yeah. One of my big memories from when I was a kid. Okay, I'll just tell you this very brief story. I don't really have to go, but I should go soon. Um, like I have 2 hours to get to work. It definitely doesn't take that long. um, okay. So at Christmas, um, yeah. But I think it made me see from a very young age like the heterosexual asymmetry thing. Because I was like, fucking, please eat and drink water. I will eat more, Rachel. Don't worry. I mean, I have chai, but I also have water. Um. Okay, so at Christmas, because there's like 36 cousins or no wait 26. I fucking can't remember. There's like a ton of us, all the kids, like my generation. There's a ton of us, and there's like with all the partners because they're all married. There's like 14 aunts and uncles and whatever. Christmas was like very, very organized because then there would be like 1 billion presents. So it was like you were assigned who to buy your present for like the big Christmas day thing. Anyway, um, the youngest aunt, she was the only one born in Canada and definitely the most liberal. Um, because she was to like English speaking, non religious Canadians, like from the time she entered school, unlike the rest of her siblings, right? She bought me Hot Wheels for Christmas because she was like closest with me and she knew that I liked Hot Wheels. And I opened it in front of everyone. And one of the uncles, I don't even remember who it was, or my grandfather, somebody was like, "Oh, you opened the wrong present. Like, that's clearly for one of the boys." And my aunt spoke up and she was like, "No, no, that's for her." Um, and in that same, and like the other aunts were giving me looks and stuff. I thought the whole thing was stupid. Me and my sister gave each other a look and we were like, these people are dumb. Then, in that same day, they had like these weird, like, sex-based competitions, and I don't think they would act that way anymore. Like clearly there's still like like a behavioral difference between the men and the women, but it's not so much like, oh, all the girls explicitly like all the girls get out do this right now. Like when I was a kid it was like that. But my right, so there was like a competition for the boys where they had like cut up a bunch of like little pieces of 2x4 and the boys were supposed to nail in like 3 nails and it was like a race that they all had to do at the same time. And then the girls had like a knitting race where they had to like knit like 3 lines of like pearl or something, like basic. And I don't even remember the girls' part at all. Like I don't know if I did it or didn't do it or whatever. But I remember going over to the boys' part and like watching them, and like I also was like kind of shocked because I didn't grow up on a farm and I didn't grow up doing construction, and I was like, aren't all of your dads like contractors and like owning farms and shit? How come you don't know this? They were hammering and they were like using their wrist to hammer, and I was supposed to use the momentum of like the actual weight of the hammer, and I took the hammer for one of my cousins and I was like, let me show you, like this is what you're doing, and I was like, but don't do that. I was like, use the weight of the hammer, and then I was look, see, it went, the nail went down in like 3 strikes, and you were doing it like 20 times and the nail barely moved, and it was like silence because it was all the men and the boys in this room, and I walked in and like schooled the boy, this like my one cousin, I don't even remember which cousin it was. I schooled one of the boys on like how to use the hammer properly. And it was like silence. And I remember one of the uncles turned to my dad and said something along the lines of like, what are you teaching your daughter at home? Something like this. And I just remember being like, these people are fucking stupid. And like as a 7-year-old, my intention was not to like one up anyone or to like brag. My intention was just to be like, oh, you're doing it wrong, let me help you. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't grow up like in a super religious setting, but I was like tangentially associated with one. And then my dad, compared to the rest of his family, and especially now that I'm older, he is like basically like liberal and woke compared to them. Like he's not. He's like a Christian who is like generally conservative-ish, but like compared to them, he's basically woke. Um, but when I was a kid, it would definitely like all this like subconscious attitudes or even like explicit stuff. Like I wasn't allowed to. My parents were more religious when I was little. I wasn't allowed to watch any TV shows with magic in them. I wasn't allowed to read fantasy novels. Like my uncle lived with us. He's 10 years older than me. So when we were kids, he was kind of like my older brother. Like we grew up in the same home for like 6 years or something. Um, and he had magic cards, like Magic the Gathering, if any of you know, but it's whatever. And like literally one time, I don't know if it was my mom or my dad, but somebody like ripped up his magic cards because they were like, this is like the devil's work or some shit. So like my parents were more religious when I was a kid, but when I compare it to like my extended family, like we were pretty liberal. I don't know. Yeah, no Harry Potter. My friend, I had one of those little portable DVD players from like, the mid 2000s, and I would like keep it in my bed, and I would borrow the Harry Potter DVDs from my friends at school and like plug in headphones and like watch the Harry Potter movies like in my bed under the blankets at night. Cuz like everybody liked Harry Potter and I didn't get to see it, so I was like I want to see it. Um yeah. Okay, we're on the last page. Oh, okay. I think this concept is very interesting. So I brought it up in the race essay, how you know my god, Rachel says I knew a kid from church who got sent away to a special camp because he'd gotten into Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, so clearly he's possessed, right? Aqua says, well, this makes a lot of sense about your coming out and semi estrangement. Yeah. I don't know. My relationship with my dad is like pretty great. Like even recently when I went back to see my family, like my extended family for the first time in 10 years, I didn't mention that I'm gay or anything like that or anything political. Like I don't even mention anything feminist. Like I really, really bit my tongue. Um, but my dad, several times I was like apologizing to him and being like, I know it's weird for you that I'm here because like they look at me and I look, I'm not wearing like a skirt and I don't have my hair in like a long braid or whatever. Like I, and he keeps being kind of like, I don't give a shit. Like you're here because like you're my family and I don't care what they think. The evolution of it has gone quite well, I think. Oh my god. Rachel, the fuck. Rachel says that they burned Harry Potter books at her church, and the kid who got sent away was assigned to be her husband when they grew up. And poor kid, he just wanted to nerd out. Yeah. Well, I hope he gets to nerd out now. I wonder what he's doing now. Aqua, you are be a virgin, make clothes, and learn canning and be submissive. Literally, that's what Mennonite girls are taught. It's so weird to me too, like because now that I've gone back and seen them now that they're older, um, it's so clear. Like the for most of the girls wear skirts most of the time, but some of them don't, and nobody says anything to them. Um, so in some ways, visibly, things have kind of modernized, but socially, the women behave the exact same fucking way. Like you get up and serve the men, no matter what's going on. Like when the men are talking, the women stop talking. Like, all of this, like socially, it's exactly the fucking same. So I'm kind of conflicted about it because on one hand, I'm like, the girls, at least of my generation, they have jobs, so they're not going to be completely financially dependent on men, like in worst case scenario, right? But they have experienced the same socialization, and they're going. I think one of my cousins is pregnant. Yeah, they're going to teach their kids the same fucking shit, right? But because they look more modernized, it will be harder for them to identify what is going on. At least that's what I think. Dragon says canning is a good skill. I agree, canning is a good skill, but Mennonites are kind of assholes. I'm sure some Mennonites would be like, how can you make these generalizations? But it is well fucking established that all of the Mennonites and the Amish and the Hutterites and all the similar Christians is well established they exploit their children. All of them are like, yep, I got this big farm because I have 9 kids, so they can work. I don't need to hire anyone. So the canning for my generation, it was different for me and my sister because we lived so far away. We lived like 2 hours away from the farm. So we only went there on the weekends. But all of my cousins who lived close, like on the same street as my grandparents' farm, um, it was like an obligation that like all the girls, like starting at like 6 or something, all of the girls had to be there for canning season. And they would spend like hours and hours, like for weeks, depending on what was being harvested from the farm. Thank you, Rachel. Um, so it was like an obligation, like for fucking little girls to be doing this like hours of labor every day. Um, and like I get it when your family is starving and all you have is the food on the farm and you need to like make it work. That's one thing, but they're not in that situation anymore, and the girls are still trained to be like that. You know what I'm saying? Um, anyway, I really need to wrap this up. Let me look at what's on the last page of this, and I need to sign off and do things. Okay. Oh right. Okay. So it's brought up here that you don't need to be a lesbian and you don't need to be like a differently abled person to treat differently abled people. You don't need to be a woman of ethnic minority to treat other women of ethnic minorities. But it's good to have like a supervisor or a consultant or someone who is of that minority in your profession, in another therapist, to give you feedback. That to me is like amazing because they're not saying, if you're not a lesbian, you don't know anything about lesbians. There's no hope of you knowing anything about lesbians. There's no way you can help a lesbian. They're not doing this like identity politics thing. But they are saying, if you are like a straight woman who has a lesbian patient, you might get something out of discussing what's going on with a lesbian therapist because they will give you a unique perspective. And I think it's good because it's like diversity, right? It's like, I mean, a white woman being a therapist for like a Muslim woman or something, right? Like a visible minority woman. Like you don't have to be the same thing to help the other person, but that there is like things you don't know, and that's okay. And you can like fill in those gaps. I don't know. I felt like that was like super super refreshing. Um, oh yeah, that's how my French Catholic family is like that. I have two uncles that died. One of them died when he was like 5, and the other one died when he was like in his 30s, I think. But because there was like 9 kids, there's still lots of kids. Dragon Fox, where is this lesbian Mennonite? You make beer, Rachel? I'm friends with this lesbian who makes wine and cheese and other things. Aqua says this section of the book has actually been about lesbian psychology. I know, right? Shocking. Okay. I'm trying to come up with some kind of a conclusion. She was in Kansas. Have you ever met a lesbian Mormon Dragon Fox? One of the first TERFs I ever became friends with, like lesbian TERFs. Can't even remember her URL. Was this woman on Tumblr? This woman on Tumblr who was an ex-Mormon lesbian. I don't know. I feel like I need to conclude this video in some way. I'm not quite sure. Um, like, really, her point on the last page is that you need to consider when is the best time to come out. Why are you coming out? What? I'm so sorry. She's basically like you need to like sit on it and think about it and like discuss with your therapist each step of the process before you do it. Um, I just think it's like a very grounded approach to the whole thing, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, I left my Tums in the car. I've been wanting to take them for hours, but I'm not fucking walking all the way over there. Okay. Okay, guys. So, tomorrow, Rachel and I will do a sister space at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT time. No, it's not that I have heartburn. Well, it is, but I think it's from the medication thing. Like I've just been nauseous a lot. I'm just coming off the medication. Yeah. Uh, and also, if you would like to be added to my Discord as usual, email me and I will vet you and add you and all that stuff. Okay. Oh no, Julia, I'm about to end the stream. Okay, so I will see you guys tomorrow in less than 24 hours. Okay. Have a great night. Um, you know, email me and stuff like that. Okay. Okay. Have a good night. Bye.